All right, 7th grade. Today we've got a ready check for Chapter 9. So I would encourage you to do some of these problems with me quick. I'm going to do some examples of the ones you're going to face. All of this should be review, so hopefully it goes well today, but I want to review some of the rules and some of the problems that you'll face today, just to make sure that they're fresh in your mind. So that first section, they're going to have you substitute some things in. Notice they tell you what these letters stand for. Remember to put them in parentheses when you put them in. Okay, and then remember to do the parentheses and multiplying first, right? And then get answers like this, okay? When you get to one like this second one, 2 times b times c. It'll look a little weird, but you'll have like double parentheses. And then remember, when you're do what's in the parentheses first. So I'm going to do 2 times 4 is 8, and then times 7 is 56. And when you're taking a fraction times a whole number, don't forget to put the fraction over, the whole number, over 1, right? And then if you can reduce, go for it, or I don't know if we can on this one. We get 112 over 3, and then don't forget to write your answer properly at the end. 3 times 3 is 9, 22, 7 times 3 is 21, and then we get 1/3. So 37 and 1/3 for this last one. So you might get some fraction answers and things like that, okay? All right, moving on. Let's do one together, though, that's got some negative numbers in them, because I want to review some of the rules for what to do with negative numbers. So let's substitute everything in. Notice for A, I'm going to put 3. For B, I'm going to put 4 divided by -4 plus 2 times C. All right, so let's do this first part first. 3 times 4 gives us 12, right? Then we have 12 divided by -4. Whenever you have a negative divided by a positive, your answer is always negative, right? Then we have 2 times 7. 2 times 7 is 14, so we have -3 plus 14. Now watch out. There's a lot of this kind of thing going on today. We're adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers, right? Integers. So be careful. Notice we're adding two numbers with different signs, so we should subtract and use the sign of the bigger number, right? So 14 minus 3 is 11, and the bigger number is positive. So there we go. So be careful with some of those rules for multiplying and dividing and adding and subtracting negative numbers today. Here are some more problems where you're adding and subtracting negative numbers. Take a look at this first one. Remember, when you're adding two numbers with the same sign, add them up and keep the sign. So I add those up. I get 9, 3, and I keep the sign. So watch out. Okay, when you've got a smaller number minus a bigger number like this, we take the bigger number and put it in parentheses, and we add a plus sign in the middle. Then you can see we're adding two numbers with different signs, right? We're adding a positive and a negative. So we're going to subtract and use the sign of the bigger number. 8 minus 2 is 6, 7 minus 3 is 4, and the bigger number was negative, so my answer will be negative. And then take a look at this last one. Notice we've got a couple negatives in a row. Ignore this one. When we say a couple negatives in a row, we mean in the middle, right? So I'm going to make them both pluses, right? Whenever you have two in a row like that, make them both pluses. And then notice we're adding opposites. We've got a negative plus a positive now that that's changed, right? So we're going to subtract and use the sign of the bigger number. This is now a positive 18, so our answer will be a positive number. So 18 minus 12 is 6, positive 6, okay? Then they're going to test your knowledge on some multiplication tricks you probably learned at least once or twice before. When you multiply by 10, you can just move the decimal one place to the right. When you multiply times 100, just move it 2 places to the right. And if you multiply times 1,000, move it 3 places to the right. So notice this one we're multiplying times 100. So I'd move my decimal 2 places to the right, whoosh, whoosh, and it would go right there. So my final answer would just be 1,575, right? And notice this one, I'm taking it times 1,000, so I'm going to move it 3 to the right. Whoosh, 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 1, 2, 3. So I end up with 675 is my final answer, okay? So watch out. They're going to test you on that trick quite a bit on that last section. These are also some tricks that you've worked on before, okay? When you multiply times 1/10 or 0.1, you're going to move it 1 decimal place to the left. So notice these are really tiny decimals. So think, when you're multiplying times little tiny decimals with 1 in them, you're going to go to the left instead. So notice I'm multiplying this one times 0.001, 1,000th, right? I want to move it 3 places to the left. So here I go. Here's where it is right now, right? 1, 2, 3. So this becomes 7.712. Notice I'm multiplying this one times 100th, so I should move it 2 places to the left. So I end up having to put an extra 0. Okay, so just keep that in mind as you do some of the problems today, those little tricks that you've been taught before. And here's one like that last one, number 25. It says a hotel costs $139 plus 10% in taxes and fees. What is the cost of taxes for one night? I want to know what 10% of $139 is, right? Because that's going to be my tax. Did you hear my key word, of, times, right? So I'm going to take $139 times 10%. But I should change 10%. Anytime you work with percents, you should change them into a fraction, right? Or excuse me, a decimal, right? So we're going to move it 2 to the left, right? That's how we change a percent into a decimal. So notice we're taking it times 0.1. Hey, do you remember that trick we just looked at? I'll go back to remind you. When you take something times 0.1, right, move the decimal one place to the left. So you can really easily find how much taxes you have to pay by moving it 1 to the left. So you're going to pay $13.90. This is actually a really cool trick for figuring out church offerings too. Remember in the New Testament times that we live in, after Jesus has lived and risen again, right? God doesn't give us a specific number to give, but a good starting point might be 10% for a couple of reasons. That's what the people of the Old Testament were asked by God to give in their offerings. And it's a really easy number to figure out. Again, not that you have to, but when Christians sometimes ask, what should we start and give for offerings? 10% is usually a pretty good number, I think, to start with. You can easily figure out 10% by just moving the decimal 1 to the left. So if you make $225, if you give $22.50 to church, you're good. Or let's say you make $13.50 babysitting, right, Samara? And we want to know what 10% of that is, so I'm going to move the decimal 1 to the left. I'd get $1.35, might be a good offering to give to church. So it's kind of a cool trick you can use not only for finding taxes in number 25, but for finding like what you could give as an offering for church, if you're ever curious what a good offering gift might be to give back to God. All right, hopefully that gets you started on your work today. Don't be afraid to reach out for some help, but hopefully today you see as mostly review. Have a good day, guys.